evening. To give you a little information about our town, we have a strong mayor government set up, which basically means the mayor has the power and the city council as sort of a council for advice and things of that matter. And the structure for tonight's debate will be as follows. Each candidate will be given up to 5 minutes for any opening remarks. All questions were submitted in advance through Liberty Speaks website or from those in attendance tonight. Questions were screened for validity and content. I will read the questions, then each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to respond. Our person and our staff will hold up a yellow card when you have 30 seconds, and then a red card when your time is up. Each candidate will answer the question in a round-robin style, allowing each candidate the opportunity to speak first. At the conclusion of the questions, each candidate will have a time for a 2-minute closing statement. With all that said, let's get started with our first question. Our first question comes from Mr. Eddie Hughes. Name one specific thing you plan to pursue in order to change what will help to bring this city more revenue instead of raising taxes as the previous administration has done. How do you plan to do this? We'll go in with Mr. Grayfield.
My experience has been that I've been around for the last 2 months talking to people every Saturday. I've picked a different neighborhood, and I think I've talked to probably about 200 or 300 different households over the last 2 months. People want business back in town. Business is not going to come in town if the taxes stay the way they are. We know that. We've seen them leave. We've seen businesses come and go in a matter of 2 or 3 months. We have to come up with some incentives to bring business in, some creative incentives, maybe things we haven't tried yet. Several people have mentioned the idea of having a free Wi-Fi network, so that things like coffee shops or restaurants would have that as a draw. You can come in and use that to do business while you enjoy their restaurant or their business. I think the big thing is if we can expand that business tax base, we can firm up that tax base, we don't have to raise taxes. If we have a bigger tax base, then that burden doesn't become so big on the few that are remaining. So I think that's the first thing, is to find new ways to bring them in, create new incentives, including things like the Wi-Fi network or possibly putting off the business tax for a year or two, let them get on their feet, find things of that nature, expand that tax base, strengthen it, and then take the burden off of the few businesses who are managing to make it around.
Carol, repeat questions.
Name one specific thing you plan to pursue in order to change what will help to bring this city more revenue instead of raising taxes as the previous administration has done. How do you plan to do this?
I would suggest that we adopt a modified version of what's called zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is much different than the current process that's involved in the budgeting process that's been being used within the city. We currently have been using it in the history of the city. We've used what's known as incremental budgeting. Incremental budgeting assumes that whatever occurred in last year's budget is constant, and the only thing that's truly identified is changes, be it of a positive to the budget, a plus, or a negative due to activities or functions within the city. Zero-based budgeting is much different. And again, using a modified, where this may, depending on the opportunity and what the council may or may not approve, to either have 100% zero-based budgeting or a partial or modified version of that. And what that would do is assume, let's just say there were different departments, then it would strip down and you would have to start from ground zero and justify every expenditure before that department budget was developed. And doing that would not only find us where there could be areas of savings, it would definitely, in doing that, allow us to work with the funds that we have since our tax base is limited.
Just like our household home, there seems to always be a way to where, you need a set of tires or you need something, a new pair of shoes for your child. I think the budgets that we have are sufficient for this time of year, for this year. And a lot of times when we need something, we just have to dig deeper instead of increasing taxes. Could a car be put off until next year? Could a hose be purchased later? Or, you know, it's hard just to pinpoint one thing. Taxes are thorn in everybody's flesh, and none of us want to raise taxes. None of us want to pay higher taxes. I think one of the biggest things is our rec department has taken over concessions, and they are really doing a lot of work with the concessions, and so is our sanitation on recycling. These are two examples of departments that are paying their own.
There's three ways to increase revenue of the city. One is tax increase, which is the one we don't want to do. Economic development is another means of increasing tax base in the city. And annexation is another one. The most chosen one is economic development. We need to work hard. We've already put in place some tools and initiatives to develop the downtown area, to seek some funding and encourage more people to come to town, which will encourage more businesses and give them a reason to come to town. We also need to look at our tax base. We need to run the city more efficiently. We need to be more accountable. And I plan to put procedures in place to make the city more accountable and therefore reduce our tax base by reducing our expense.
Well, I think my opponent said it all right there. One of the first things that he said was taxes, and he voted for the recent tax increase. And I think that that's very telling of what we're looking at here. I defer back to Daniel Graybill. Business is the answer. Business is all the deserted liberty. I believe this is the sole fault of our city, and it has little consequence from our national economic woes. I've watched as Easley and Clemson and Central and Pickens have embraced business and grown their inner city with useful gathering places. My wife and my son and I just recently went to Easley to enjoy a moonlight movie, and boy, I really loved it. And there were 600, 700 people there, and those people most likely were going to go out and enjoy a meal at a restaurant, either before or after they bought concessions from the city. I really think that growing businesses is the key, and also communication. If you have communication with the residents, they'll come to these events, and they'll do things that will generate revenue for the city.